Okay, good morning. Hello there. My name is Jo Baldwin-Trott and I am publisher and editor of a new book called Being Fine. I'm really thrilled today to have four of the authors of this new book and also the founder of My Black Dog charity, which actually is what the whole book is about, because it's about not being fine. It's about admitting when things aren't good, when you're struggling, and sharing that. And actually, it's aimed at men, which is obviously why Niki and I are a little bit outnumbered. So first of all, let's say hi to Niki Clarke. Thank you for joining us, Niki.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And so nice to be here with all you writers as well.
Fantastic. I know. Good company. Hey, good company. So Niki, thank you so much for joining us. My Black Dog is a charity that sort of jumped up into my periphery as I was looking at mental health charities. All my books I create support a charity. And I have been doing events for Mind for many years. But when a new charity comes up about mental health that is slightly different and actually sort of really appeals and says something different, and that's what your charity did for me, because the whole point of your charity is they're people that have been there themselves, and the way you offer it. So I'm going to pass over to you. Please tell us what your charity is about and how you help people.
Oh, thank you so much. I started My Black Dog a couple of years ago because I've suffered from depression my whole life. And I'd been in a situation where I'd experienced some trauma and I had PTSD and anxiety. And what I needed was to go to the doctor and get some medication. And I knew that I wasn't well. I knew that I needed that because of my past experiences. And then I was put on this wait list for counselling. And I was on that wait list for about 8 weeks. And I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but when you get on that NHS waiting list, it's just torture. You know, it's weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And we get bounced around the system a lot because the NHS is so massively overwhelmed with this epidemic that we have in this country of mental health. And when I did finally get to speak to someone, I got to speak to a professional counsellor, and I sat in their office and I'd said something truly hideous, like, I don't want to live anymore. And they said, and how does that make you feel?
Wow.
And I thought, it doesn't matter how many qualifications you have, you'll never understand how this feels. And whilst I'd never tell you not to get counselling or not to take medication, because I think they're important, I think they can save your life, I think what would have been valuable for me at that time was to speak to somebody who understood me, because I'd hidden a lot of that from my family and friends because I didn't want to burden them or hurt them. And I was so alone. I felt so dreadfully alone. And so I started My Black Dog with the idea that you could put someone in touch with someone who'd been through it before, had a lived experience, because I think that empathy is so powerful. I don't think sympathy is, and we get a lot of sympathy, but I never want to be felt sorry for, and I know that lots of people don't want that either. You want to feel empowered and feel like it's okay. And when you speak to people who've had a lived experience, then suddenly you're not alone, and you've got a reason to keep going because you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you can do it together. And there isn't this imbalance of I'm broken and you know how to fix me. It's like peer to peer. And so it's peer to peer support. And you can just talk to someone who gets it.
Well, it's
And that's My
fantastic.
Black Dog.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think it's so important. And actually, that is your main purpose, isn't it? And message for the people you offer your service to. And you also offer mostly online, don't you, as well, which is really
Yeah.
powerful. Tell us about why you do that.
Well, I did that for a reason. It's a chat function, not a phone function. And the reason for that is because it's very difficult to talk about these things, and it's very difficult to say these things out loud. And we do this quite a lot, don't we, in society? We say, talk, 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 talk. And I think, God, no, don't talk to the wrong person, because if you speak to the wrong person and they judge you or they reject you or they leave you, then you might never speak to someone again. And so when we urge people to talk about things, I think talk to the right person who gets it, who understands, because it's so hard to muster the courage to say these things out loud. It's such a monumental struggle. And you want to make sure you get the right reception when you've done it. You want to make sure that you're not judged, that it's a soft landing. And so I made it a chat function because I think actually saying these words out loud is really hard, but typing them is easier for some reason. I think maybe because we live in a digital age, or I don't know. But also, have you ever been in that situation where you're on the phone with someone and they're being very kind and they say, "You okay?" And you just bottle it and go, "I'm fine," and then you put the phone down because because the kindness is too overwhelming. So it's a chat function. It's just literally, you know, when you go on a website and you see a little chat with us button, you click that B&Q, whatever. It's exactly the same thing, except you get to speak to a volunteer who's had a lived experience and really does understand what it's like to go through these things.
Oh, it's fantastic. I think it's really powerful. And I'm going to come to our first author, Steve, because I know he has a definite huge message about the fact that verbalizing the issues for him, and actually generally for men, women generally find it much easier to yabble away. You know, we kind of do that. It's in our makeup. But I know Steve is one of our authors here today. Thank you very much for joining us, Steve. But this is something that's really important to you, isn't it, about the book and the message of not saying you're fine?
Yeah, I mean, I'm disappointed in some ways because I've just come out of doing, so hello everybody. So what do you do with an unmotivated motivational speaker? I know. So I've been a motivational speaker from Yorkshire, which is a bit strange in itself, for 26 years, right? But I think 2016 was the height of my clinical depression. I had it twice. So my chapter in the book is very much about the old me, the depressed me, and the new me, right? Now, the challenge I had was when I had depression, we're going to what caused it. I'm a big on really, I think we get lost. Lots of people, you're quite right, Nikki. I think the chat function's brilliant because people love and care for you when you dare to tell them. Obviously, I told my wife, I've been married over 30 years. She was my rock. But it was a while before I told my friends, and quite a lot of my male friends wanted to solve it. They wanted to solve it because men do that, don't they? Men go, right, I'll solve it. Is it money? And everybody gets lost down this rabbit hole of the cause. And I've got to tell you, right to this day, I'm not quite sure what caused my depression. And people want to get, and I'm going, no, let's not. So I could tell you how I felt during that depression time, but I'd rather put the focus on how I was before and how I am now, because I think it's about giving people hope. So the old me was, as you can probably tell, full of energy. You know, my job, you know that slot after lunch at a conference, I'm assuming you've all been to a conference, right? I normally got the slot after lunch at a conference. Now, if you knew what a slot after lunch at a conference was called, what's it called?
The snooze hour or something.
Slot, right?
Yeah,
so my job was to rah-rah the troops, right, in the Yorkshire fashion. So that's what I did for years and years and years till depression hit me. So I went from being this sort of Duracell bunny, and also I'd written a book, because I like sense of humour. So this is my book. It's called How to Be a Complete and Utter Failure, right? 44 and a half steps to lasting underachievement. So I guarantee if you read this book, it will propel you into the slow lane of total inadequacy, right? It's actually a book about how to be more successful in life, work, and everything, but written with a sense of humour, right? Because that's part of my style. So my style is very much sort of stand-up meets business guru, right? So that was my life. So that's what I was like. And the number one thing I started to tell people, and you'll have all heard this, of all the people I know, Steve, I never thought you would be the one to get depression. Right? So my big thing in my chapter, I think my big theme, if there's a theme, is that I think it's totally misunderstood. And the difference between empathy and sympathy. So people give you sympathy, but they give it from a position of misunderstanding. So there's a paper, I won't name it, the Daily Mail. There's a paper, right, that has this article, and they ask celebrities, right, they ask them these questions like, you know, are you still fit? Can you run up a flight of stairs, right? They ask them that. But one question they always ask me is, have you always been depressed? And the number one answer, I would say 95% of those celebrities say, no, because I'm a glass half full type person. And I think that's nonsense, because that says that with mental illness and with depression, in my case, you have a choice. And I naively thought that you did, because I was teaching this stuff. I talk about this in my book, the power of belief, the power of mindset. I don't care how strong your mindset is. I don't care what empowerment beliefs you have. If you have an illness, and it is an illness, right? People don't say to you, get over a broken leg, do they? And all that, right? So my big message is, it's misunderstood, and it's a non-discriminatory disease, right? You don't have a choice whether you get it or not. 1 in 3 people, and sadly with what's going on at the minute, perhaps more, right, will suffer some form of mental illness, and particularly men. And so with men, we have to be brave enough and stand up and go, look, I'm a motivational speaker. I know all the tricks and trades about mindset and belief. And if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. And we need to talk about it. And the final message will be this. I thought by talking about it, and I've been talking about it in various forms and formats since I had it on stage. I'm more than happy to say to people, I've suffered from mental illness, right? And it's not something we should be ashamed of. It's not a stigma. It's like any other disease, right? And I thought that things were improving, but I was maybe doing the Edinburgh Fringe this year to celebrate. So I did. So I met Joe because Joe was one of my shows. I did 26 consecutive shows, right? And quite a lot of people, when I talked about having depression, went, again, this is, 5 or 6 years on, oh, I didn't think somebody like you could have ever had depression. I thought you'd be really mentally strong. So sadly, things haven't changed. So I think this book is about getting that message out there and say, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about it from people who've been there. And the final thing to say is it's unique to us all. So I can write a chapter, which I'm really excited to do for this book, but it would just be my personal experience of it, right? It'd be my personal experience. It's unique to us all. But let's start talking about, let's get rid of the stigma, and particularly let's get rid of the misunderstanding.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Steve. Sorry, Nikki.
No, I was just saying, I just completely agree. I mean, it's just we talk about this a lot now, don't we? I mean, it's very vogue, isn't it? We like to talk about mental health, and everyone wants to get on the bandwagon. And I said to people, I wouldn't have been able to start My Black Dog 5 years ago, not 10 years ago. It's very, very fashionable to talk about mental health. And whilst I'm grateful for that, at the beginning when it happened, I thought it's a trick. They're trying to round us up. They want to flush us out. And
as a farmer.
Right. They're going to send us all off and they're going to section us all. And I still was very hesitant about talking about it. And because we're very good liars. We've had to be our whole lives. We've had to, do it and be undercover. It seems a bit odd now that suddenly everyone's talking about it. And I think, do you really know what it's like? Are you just jumping on the bandwagon? The people that are quiet are the ones you've got to watch out for. It's not the ones that are trumpeting around on social media about this. It's the quiet ones who are just trying to get on and survive. And that's the main issue. But these stories have to now be from the people who have experienced it. It's no good telling people, like you were saying about fixing people. You can't fix someone. We're not broken. It's not, sometimes you just need to talk. You don't need a solution. And there is no solution. It's kind of the way it is.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's coming out of this already, speaking to you authors and already with talking to many people about this issue of really being honest about how you feel, is that it really depends on what you do as well. And obviously Steve was in advertising, that real high energy. But I want to come on to Simon now, because Simon's industry and your background is very macho, and actually I draw a correlation with the police that I was in, which has huge, really high depression rates of undiscussed depression is what I would call it, and mental health issues. But actually you come from an industry that is, you would actually also, like Steve was saying, you probably wouldn't expect people to be really struggling with mental health, and yet you were, and so do a lot of people that you work with. So hi Simon. Tell us a little bit about your chapter and what your story is.
Well, can I just say, bringing me on straight after Steve is a bit like Steve's graveyard shift after lunchtime.
Sorry, but I know someone had to follow him.
Yeah, so my chapter, majority of my working life has been on building sites where men generally don't talk about their mental health, their own feelings or any emotion. And for me, it was that sense of loneliness. I think Steve said about how lonely, and Nikki certainly did, how lonely you feel and unable to share your burden. And for me, I was very, very lucky. I went to a doctor. It says it all in my book. But I went to a doctor and he sat down and listened. And it's the ability to be able to actively listen to people, as well as if you're that person suffering, to get that message across, which is key for me, being able to listen to how people are feeling without wanting to fix, as Steve was quite rightly saying.
Yeah, and sorry.
No, the statistics for you're 3.7 times more likely to commit suicide in the construction industry than you are the national average. So men are already 3 times more likely to commit suicide than women. And in the construction trade, you're 3.7 times more likely to again.
Wow.
And that's through the stresses and strains of not having constant work. But it's also very much this macho image and the inability to be able to share. So yeah, that's what I'm keen about for coming across in this book.
And you've obviously created this lovely practice that you're going to be taking forward into a service for men to create, because even obviously Niki has had not a terrible experience of going to the doctors, because everyone says that's the first port of call, but you've got this lovely offering, haven't you, for men to share, but in a safe kind of comfortable environment and situation.
Yeah, so it was my life has been quite meandering. From the building trade, I ended up into education. I was working with a homeless charity down in Plymouth, and as part of that, I started spoon carving workshops, because I'm a carpenter, and I was at a festival, and we did these spoon carving workshops. It enables that sitting around in circle like we always used to, in our tribe. And if you hold that space, it almost gives permission to people, whether men or women, it gives permission to feel safe and to talk and to share stories and share experiences. And that's kind of evolved through my story of getting into education. I now work at a college, lecturing on construction craft, and I do a lot of tutoring. So I'm looking after pastoral care of young people going into the building industry as well. So it's holding space with those guys and enabling that dialogue, which isn't in the education system.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And Niki, you have recognised this, haven't you? Because you recommend various different support groups for people that have gone to My Black Dog that are not the average and the obvious.
I mean, I think that I think that we've got this antiquated system where we go to the doctor, get some medication, have 6 weeks of counselling, boom, back to work. And it doesn't really work that way, because these things linger. And if you're like me, it's going to be your whole life. This is your life, so you have to learn how to deal with it. And I wanted a resource that people could go to and find the thing that works for them, because it's some people, when they love to recommend stuff, when they haven't really been through it, and they'll go, oh, go on, just go out, it'll make you feel better. Or have you tried yoga? And you're like, I haven't brushed my teeth for 3 days, I can't get out of the house, how am I supposed to get to a yoga class? And it's really sort of trying to match something that's worked for you before. And loads of people have got different things that work for them. It's not a case of, well, go running. I hate running, I'm not doing it. And it's there's so much fear as well that people don't understand. Just the ability to get dressed, to have a shower, to clothe myself, to get out of the house is such a monumental thing. And to even do that, to get to the shops, that's an achievement some days. So suggesting crazy things like a hiking trip just isn't going to work. But if you've got a list of things and resources, and try the things that work for you, because it's also about preventative care, right? Because when you have a crash, it's so much harder to recover from. But if you can see the signs early on and you go, right, I'm in trouble, okay, what can I do? The little bit by little bit, and whether that's aromatherapy, it's boxing, whether that is yoga or whatever it is. Find the thing that works for you, because one size does not fit all minds. We're complex individuals, we're complex creatures. You've got to find the thing that works for you. And Simon, you're completely right, Simon. There's this book that I'm reading at the moment called Lost Connections, and it's about the way that we don't work as a tribe anymore in society. We do things on our own. We live on our own. We date online. We have things delivered. We don't see people enough. And especially recently, we've been in lockdown. So, we've lost this tribal community. We just don't do it anymore. We're very isolated beings. And people are really suffering from that, because we're not designed to be alone. It's a recent phenomenon. So I totally agree with sitting down, telling stories, and connecting with each other, because it's so important. But I would like to build up our database of everything that people can do, because I'm so interested, and the weirder the better, because I love that. I love anything that's not standard and that people have done it before, and you sort of feel, oh, yeah, I know I've done it, I've tried it. I love new stuff.
Brilliant. So if anyone's watching this that has got some kind of offering a service that they can suggest to you to get in touch, right? Info at myblackdog.co.
Info at myblackdog.co for any weird and wacky and marvelous and beautiful things that you can recommend.
Yeah, fantastic. That'd be great. Yeah, well, because obviously part of my reason for, that's my dog. She's not black actually, but that's my little Yorkie, if you can hear her. And obviously it has been a difficult time. My concern, and actually quite a strong concern, is that we're going to a winter that could be one of the toughest for a long time. And it really concerns me that we need to create these sort of situations. Simon, it's like, do you offer what you do online? Because I think, and everything has to be online, but at least if we're making a point to say, you can sit in your lounge, but you'll feel like you're with me, we can create a community feeling online, so that people don't really feel isolated this winter as the nights start drawing in, as the recession starts coming in. It's not looking good, and I think we need to offer as much as we can that's, like you say, Niki, different. Do you do online circle sessions as well, Simon?
I've not tried online circle sessions. Yeah, that's a very interesting concept. I may well look into that.
Yeah,
Definitely.
cool. I think, and at the moment, unfortunately, that I think realistically that's the way it's kind of going to be. There are a lot of people that still struggling. Having said that, more people are coming out and outdoors. The parks have never been used more, and I just hope people continue to do that, no matter what the flipping weather. Just dress up, get out there. Fresh air is so important, even if it's for 2 minutes. So if people can just connect in even small groups in a park or whatever. And I just want to come on to Mike now, who's not called Claire, obviously. I promised I wouldn't say it, but I just did. Because obviously not all struggles with mental health and are for obvious reasons, or the kind of the more normal reasons. So Mike has got an incredible story, and Mike was one of the first authors that kind of came on my radar, and I was absolutely just flabbergasted by your story and your experience, but it was something that hit home with me. But I'll let you talk more about that, Mike. Welcome, Mike.
Right, thank you. Yeah, so first of all, it's a great pleasure to meet everyone and speak to everyone about a subject that is very close to my heart as well. But yeah, so my story is more a crisis situation that came about because of marriage breakdown, divorce after 17 years of marriage, and what it did to me really was something really quite catastrophic. I was one of those people who, when I heard the D word, used to roll my eyes and think, oh no, this is really boring, let's move on to another subject, But what happened with me was I went into a phase of suffering from what I didn't know at the time was an extreme critical level of anxiety. And I chose to, like Niki and lots of other people, contact my doctor and was brutally honest with my doctor about the crisis that I was in. And what I can only describe that happened from there on was a voyage of self-discovery, self-care, self-determination. Initially, I thought what I wanted was some sort of medication to stop my pain, rather than me taking action to stop that pain myself. You know, I didn't know whether that was antidepressants or painkillers or what it might be. And actually, what the doctor did was something quite remarkable. He said, let's get you sleeping first. Because I can tell you, I hadn't slept for over 7 days, not a wink of sleep. And so my whole body was in a crisis situation, and I didn't know it at the time. And I started to experience all kinds of physical ailments that I'd never experienced before. And that's when I first learned that the mind and the body are connected. And I started to read an awful lot more about that. I started to get a little bit spiritual with it, reading a lot of Buddhist texts, thinking about the fact that, you know, they start from a position of, if life is suffering, what are you going to do about it? And it's quite a remarkable message, actually, because I think what we've all confirmed on this call is that everybody suffers at some point in life, either through a crisis situation or a continual situation. And at the end of the day, yes, I mean, getting help from others is fundamentally important, but I believe it's as Niki said earlier, down to what works for you, and it's different for everybody. And for me, the mind and the body are connected. I spend a lot more time than I used to focused on my health, my physical health, for the first time kind of in my life in recent years. And it's moved on from that. But why I've become involved in the book is that also what happened is that I took an interest in the written word, i.e. writing myself. I found solace in that. I found a way of expressing and processing my thoughts. And also, if you're involved in a breakup and you're in a situation as a man where there are children involved, and you become even more isolated than you ever were because friends disappear. It's very important to have family, and that in itself is a journey that has to be trodden very carefully as a man. So there's an awful lot of things connected with this book and this subject matter. And I'm very, very interested in it. I'm in the process of exploring. I have my own book project as a side project, but that's going to take time. It's still cooking. So yeah, so that's me. Hopefully that helps. Oh, we've lost Joe.
We've lost
Sorry,
our
my dog was barking, so I muted myself. So yeah, no, thanks, Mike. It's really great to hear your story. And obviously, there's so many points. There's lots. You were all doing nodding dog then. I think there's so many points you hit that made that resonated. And I know knowing all of your stories and Simon's story, I think there's quite a lot of correlation between your stories in some ways. And the thing I just want to give a little note to Mike, obviously, that really kind of just really bowled me over with what happened to you was actually the reason for your struggles were actually because of your wife going through the menopause, and she suffered horribly, and I won't go into more details, that's your story, but you know, she suffered horribly, and your health was actually hugely impacted because of that, and actually the events that kind of occurred after that, wasn't it? So it's not your average kind of reason for someone, as well as I suppose the amount of work you were doing.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, your partner's health does impact, and their mental health and well-being does impact not just your relationship, but your own as well. That area is kind of like one of the main causes of my struggle, and in itself, it's a whole subject matter that also needs explored, I believe. As you know, Joe, you and I spoke about this, because like a lot of areas of life, I think we're giving a lot of kind of the wrong medication at times. I witnessed what I believe manufactured chemical hormone can do to somebody, and I wouldn't necessarily put just women in that category. You know, we've now got people in North America, men taking testosterone, and it does all kinds of terrible things to them, you know. So it's an area that I'm also interested in, and I know everyone's talking a lot about the menopause now as well. It's no longer taboo, and I got involved in a big project where a woman was writing about that, and she wants to include men in the conversation, which is very, very interesting in itself. But yes, a whole other subject matter, but fundamentally was kind of central to my story. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And obviously, I know, Steve, your wife wrote a chapter in, because you've got your own book as well. She wrote a chapter in your book as well, didn't she? Because she had a...
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. So I didn't talk about the new me. I talked about the old me, Duracell Bunny, motivational speaker, the depressed me. This is basically how the structure. Joe, I will send you this. I don't know if you've all sent your chapters in yet. And the last bit is the new me. So the hope I would give to people, I know, Niki, you're saying this is something you have to live with all the time. The black dog for me now is just a little distant bark occasionally, right? So last night I came back from a run, running I know it doesn't do for you, Niki. I came back from a run and somebody had not put the cream back in this fridge properly, and it came out, and I'm talking like a pint of cream was everywhere. And then I felt myself nearly crying. Right, and that's a little sign for me. So back in those deep dark days, I distinctly remember bursting into tears because the cat had been sick on the carpet, and I thought, you know, that ain't normal, is it? That just ain't normal, right? So yeah, my wife was my rock. So my three main goals this year was running the London Marathon. So how I dealt with depression was I stopped drinking at 60. I've been a lifetime drinker, right? And I did that by changing my mindset. So I stopped drinking at 60. I joined the gym at 61, having never done any exercise for 35 years. Then I took up running because my wife, Candy, who I love dearly, had done Couch to 5K. Then I said to her, because I'm a bit competitive, you know, we should do like a 10K race. So we did a 10K race. And I said, you know, twice a 10K race is a half marathon. So we did a half marathon. And I said, you know, twice a half marathon is a marathon. So both me and Candy were meant to be running the London Marathon this year on behalf of Sports Aid, right? Which helps young athletes, next generation. So the new me is just an even better version of my old self. That's the hope. Now, if you have to live with this black dog all the time, you'll have those moments. But for me, I wouldn't wish ill health on anyone, but I now look back to that period as a gift, like the best gift I was ever given, ever. Yeah. Because I have so much more gratitude. You know, I was probably just coasting before. Yeah, here I am, motivational speaker, right? And I went through 2 years of hell, really, with that. I used to believe I lost 2 years of my life, but I didn't. It was just some seeds growing, right? Yeah. So I'm back with the passion now. And Joe, I'll tell you, when I did those 26 consecutive shows, people going, can you just turn the energy down a bit, Steve, right? So I'm still doing the virtual marathon, right? So you said we've got a bit of time after today. Today I'm going to go out and run 10 miles. Last week I ran 22 miles because the virtual marathon, London Marathon, has said, can't do the marathon this year, but you can run it on your own. So I'm going to run 105.5 laps of my local running course, right, which will take me, I'm aiming to beat my personal best and do it in under 4 hours, and I'll be nearly 64.
Oh, this is amazing.
I know, but that wouldn't have happened. That wouldn't have happened if I'd not been given that gift. Yeah. So you're quite right, Mike. The mind and body connection, right? And I think if you can reframe it, and I know when you're right in the middle of it, you can't. I could not have read the book we're about to write together when I was ill. That's the challenge, because you just wouldn't have the energy. You're quite right, Joe. I couldn't even clean my teeth. Couldn't get out of bed. I was in the dark room. But I think the people that are helping the people suffering from mental illness are just as important. And my wife, Candy, wrote a chapter in my new book. So there's a third edition of that book is meant to be coming out, but it's put back by COVID, right? And I said, you should write this chapter, because I think they're the overlooked silent minorities or majority, right? The people have to care for folk like us if we're lucky to have someone. And what advice do they get? what help do they get? Because it's just as confusing for them when this total stranger turns up like I did.
Yeah.
Like, who are you? What's this? Who are you? What have you become? Right.
It's really
so
tough.
I think this book needs to help those people.
Yeah, it's really tough. And there's another author who's coming on that's getting their partner to write the chapter actually, which is really exciting. And actually, I know I've told you guys this, but the thing that spurred me into doing this book was because one of our authors is female, the only author that's female, but her husband died of COVID because she believes he kept saying he was fine and he wouldn't admit how unwell he was until it was too late. And as a partner watching that happen, she's been with him many years and had this difficult kind of situation with communication, very traditionally British. And that was a big part of this book for me, is actually we need to discourage that. We need to retrain, especially men that have been trained, because it is training, to keep things in. But that brings us on nicely to our fourth author that I'm going to come to now, Kapil. Thank you for waiting patiently, because I think there is so much difference between the way men and women communicate, how we communicate, what we say, what we expect to hear back. I'm sure Niki and I, we could probably have a completely different chat about this than you guys would, because of the way we process and then share. And Kapil, this is something that is very much on your radar, about the different energies, how we work and how we communicate. So tell us a little bit about you and what you do just before we finish. Thank you.
Thanks, Jo. And nice to meet you guys. While I was listening to everyone, it's like, oh, we are not really that unique. I think ultimately, I think as men, I would say we've been conditioned to hold our feelings in and be seen as like, oh, we are like macho or stoic or n number of things. And my journey, I've not really clinically ever been diagnosed as depressed or having mental health issues, but I think when I look back, I've definitely had episodes where I was depressed. So similar to Mike, I was married. I was in a long-term relationship, and after 11 years, got divorced. I had what you would call a successful corporate career for 15 years. Did my MBA, and I was pretty much on that success corporate ladder, and it got to a point, I think about 2012, where I literally had to stop myself and question what I was doing. And now when I look back at it, I can look at it as quite profound moment. But when I was inside it was literally just a sense of numbness. It literally felt like my life was in this narrow bandwidth of emotions where I would never allow myself to feel any pain, which also meant I never felt any joy in my life. So I was just like cruising around in this narrow bandwidth, doing things, and life was good. Like I had pretty much ticked all the boxes that, people, when they look at you and they say, oh, he's made it in life. So I had ticked all those boxes. So from outside in, my life looked really good. But when I felt I wanted to change, I wanted to I didn't feel joy in my life. I didn't feel, I was happy, but not really. It just felt like, oh, if I have to live another, I was 35 at the time. If I have to live another 35 years like this, life's going to be pretty boring. It became predictable. It felt like I had the formula down for success, for doing things in a certain way. And there was no mystery in life. And I didn't know what was the way out. And I was lucky enough to get onto a personal transformation, personal growth journey, which really sort of woke me up and woke me up to, someone asked me this question, it's like, oh, what do you want in life? And I couldn't think beyond, like all the material things, relationship, house, car, vacations. I was like, what else? You know, and then I realized I didn't really know who I was. I had lived pretty much all of my life making other people happy. And if I achieved all these things, my family will be happy, my friends will be happy, people in the my social circle will look at me and say, oh, he's made in life. And somehow there was this idea that when I've got all these things, then I should have happiness in my life, which wasn't the case. So I went down, sort of wanted to understand relationships. You know, after my marriage broke down, I really wanted to understand why that happened. And I really went down this like spiral of understanding myself, discovering myself, who I was, who I am, what my belief system was, how did I get to where I got to. And along the lines, what I found was I started to take part in men's groups. And in addition to all the work that I was doing on myself, the thing I really found was when I was within a group of men who could hold space, there was a part of me that was able to come out that wasn't available anywhere else. And so I started holding men's groups, running men's workshops, and just like working with men quite a lot after a couple of years of doing my own work. And so part of my article is about that. Is I find that men, you know, when you ask men, how are you? Usually you get two simple things: I'm good and I'm fine. And in my work with men, I find that it is down to the fact that we're just so used to not sharing our feelings, our emotions, our sensitivity, our vulnerability, because we've been told that being vulnerable is weak. If I'm sensitive, then I'm a wuss. If I show my emotions, then somebody's going to take advantage of my emotions. Like even if you look at any place where people talk about success mindset, one of the things they say is that don't share your vulnerabilities because people can manipulate you. And I say bullshit to that, you know? It's like the deepest connections I have had since I started doing this work is when I'm really open, when I'm vulnerable, when I'm really sensitive, when I let people feel what I'm going through and what I'm feeling. And that transformed my way of thinking and my way of living. And now I am married again, and my relationship, the way I look at relationships is completely different. Relationship itself has become a practice. And it's interesting, Simon, you were talking about men's groups. So I hold virtual men's groups every week. And I have a community of men that I work with. Before COVID, we also started a panel discussion. We've had 3 so far. It's called Man Up Talks, uplifting talks for men. And it's just a way of, it's me and a couple of other guys, because of our experiences that we've gone through as men, and also around relationship and sexuality. There's so many men who are afraid of rejection, afraid of not getting the approval. All the dating scene, if you look at, you know, the pickup artist type of thing, it's all because people don't have the confidence to say what they want and approach other people with sensitivity and vulnerability. So it's part of the reason why I agreed to write this thing with Joe is like, it's just such a important part I find in today's day and age, where like we live in a very masculine society. And when I say masculine, I mean very goal-oriented, achievement-based, success-based society, that we're continuously striving for something and not really allowing ourselves to feel how things are where we are. And the thing that I work with men and I teach everyone is about spirit. Well, it's spiritual in some ways. I don't like to call the word spiritual, but it's about how to be in the present moment, how to be open, how to live your life with your heart open, because that's when you feel really alive. And it's a passion that I have working with men. And I've set up a new organization called Nibbana.life, which is all about people who are like me, stuck in this success spiral and got to a point where it's like, oh, what's next? I've done all these things, but I'm not happy. And that's where you have to like really untangle all the wires, almost like destroy your ego and your life, and then rebuild from the place of really understanding who you are and really understanding your blueprint, and live a life where you can connect with people. Because ultimately, what I have found is that connection is the medicine. Like when I sit in a circle with men, and we get lots of new men every now and then, you know, like coming to our men's group. And every single time when a man comes into a men's group for the first time, they're like, I didn't think it was possible to sit with men and be this open. And it's almost a healing experience of sitting in a men's group with other men and just be able to express all the emotions, express all the places where we put pressure on ourselves, express all the places where we think we are failing, and also sometimes brag. I think as men, we don't brag enough. You know, we'd like to get into this one-upmanship sort of battle. I am better than you kind of thing, but we don't really sort of talk about the things that we do well. And I feel that just being with other men gives me that permission, which I don't get anywhere else. And it's not to say that I think connection with women and that is really important. And I think I get a different kind of connection and intimacy with women when I am with women. But I feel that the thing that's missing in our culture with men is that tribe, is that men's tribe. Just like women are naturally sort of connected. Women like to connect, you know, men don't. And it's so crucial to start building tribes of men where men can go and just connect with each other and talk to each other. Yeah. And that's what I'm passionate about, and that's what I want to bring out.
Thank you, Kapil. It's brilliant. Gosh, just amazing. So pin drop moment, you know, you've got a lovely voice. Kapil's actually doing a TED talk. He won't share that because he needs to brag more. But he's also doing a TED talk soon. So you can hear Kapil on stage, well, on stage, so to speak. But no, thank you. I think that's really, it's so valid that actually men's groups have only just really in the last 5-10 years been kind of anywhere. They just didn't exist, did they? And obviously one of our mutual friends I know has done a lot of men's groups, men's spiritual groups. I'm going to say it because I really believe it's a word we also should say much more, because spirituality is connection with ourselves and the bigger picture, which is actually what you're saying, really. So thank you guys. It's been such an amazing discussion. I just wanted to let it flow, and obviously I really appreciate you disclosing and sharing your stories, sharing your situations. And Niki, you're one of your patrons is the amazing Eddie Temple Morris, who's written about his own experience, hasn't he? But the one thing he definitely says, Steve, which you hit on, was that it was a gift to him, and his life since has been incredible. And all you guys, I've got goosebumps now, you know, you're all doing amazing new things with the experience that you've had, and obviously sharing what happened to you really helps. Niki, is there anything you'd like to just share just before we close off that we can do for you, do for My Black Dog? People can go to myblackdog.co to find out more about Niki, or obviously to connect and talk about any issues or struggles they're having.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, I just wanted to thank you all for contributing to the book, and Joe for contributing to My Black Dog with that. It's very, very kind of you. And yeah, follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, and tell the biggest challenge that we face at My Black Dog is we're such a small organization that not many people know about us. So the more people that know, the more people we can help. So please get the good word out. We're online every day. And yes, myblackdog.co.
Fantastic. Oh, it's been wonderful chatting to you again. Thank you so much, Steve. Great to see you again. Thank you, Mike, not Claire. Oops, I did it again. Thank
Thanks,
you,
guys.
Simon.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you, Kapil. The book will be out in a matter of weeks in the autumn, which is probably a very good time for this story to come out before we hit the winter in the UK, which I'm not a big fan of either. But anyway, so let's help each other. Thank you for watching this. I hope you've enjoyed this or listened to the podcast. And the book, Being Fine, published by Proper Books with these amazing authors, will be out very soon, available on Amazon. Okay, thanks very much for watching or listening. Take care. Bye.